Arcade Perfect by Arse. Right, okay guys, welcome to another Arcade Perfect my Arse. It's been a wee while since I've done one of these. Purely and simply down to the fact that I'm kind of running out of games. Now I know you're probably yelling at the screen saying, wait a minute, there's 10,000 games in MAME, but yeah, 9,000 of these are games I'm not remotely interested in playing. So anyway, yeah, this is a bit of a classic, Badlands, released in 1989. Now, funnily enough, when I was trying to get a bit of information about this game, all that kept popping up was Badlands for the modern consoles. But we are talking about the original Badlands, the good game. So yeah, it came out in 1989. It was published by Atari Games, and it was ported by Domark under the Tengen label to the Commodore Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum. Now apparently it's set in the aftermath of a nuclear war, and it races around abandoned wastelands with many hazards. 3 gun-equipped cars race around a track to win prizes. The game is a rethemed version of Atari's previous racing games Super Sprint and Championship Sprint, with the addition of vehicular combat. So this is the arcade one. I've never played this in the arcades. I've never even seen it in the arcades. It's very Atari-esque. It's almost Atari had brought out this kind of new hardware which they used for multiple games, including Paperboy, Zybots, I think it was. What else? Tubin, APB. So yeah, the sound in this game is really good, and yeah, also, as I mentioned earlier on, the Championship Sprint, Super Sprint, it does the sound effect when you pick up the spanner is exactly the same. There's quite a few sound effects which Atari have recycled. Nothing wrong with that. It actually plays very much like a Super Sprint, which again is no bad thing. Obviously I'm playing with the joystick in this. If you're playing in arcades, you'd have been using the steering wheel. And like Super Sprint, you pick up these wrenches which then allow you to upgrade your car. You've got missiles and... Right, now I've just noticed, you'll probably see that when I turn that to try and upgrade, it goes very fast. Obviously just because it's kind of analog. I mean, it controls, I'm playing this with an Xbox 360 controller and it plays absolutely fine. But when you're turning around, the wheel spins way too quick. I always think it looks like you're driving the hearse out of Ghostbusters. They do look a wee bit like that. But funnily enough, I thought that this had been ported to the Nintendo NES, but apparently not. So it was only the home computers that got these ports. That noise as well. Yeah, so when you pick up the spanner and what have you. And I think the engine sound as well. I think that's been lifted straight from Super Sprint, the Championship Sprint. Right, okay, let's take a look at the first version, which is on the ZX Spectrum. Obviously the colour's going to be a bit less, as we'd expect. Alright, okay, waiting for other player to join in. So yeah, you could obviously have 2 people playing the Spectrum one. Right, now obviously it's not got the same graphic razzmatazz, can't even say the damn word. I'm using the keys for this. Shock horror, yep, Mainmeister is using keys, but I find the keys the easiest control method. It's the most accurate way to play this game. It was the same with Championship Sprint and Super Sprint that I had on the Atari ST. though you could use a joystick, I always use the keys because you could just get that, you know, you could just get that fine tuning when you're going in the corner. I have to say, this plays really, really well. It feels good. Now, there's no reason why a game like this shouldn't play as well as it does, but it handles really well, especially going in corners. That's really nice. Oh, there it seemed to stop. Now, there was another game, I don't know if it came before or after, called Super Off-Road, which was basically this game, but it was off-road. Again, I don't think I ever actually played that. But I will need to, if I've not already done an Arcade Perfect, I will try and do it. But yeah, this is great. Plays really well. The thing is, the arcade game itself, it's not exactly mind blowing when it comes to graphics. Yeah, the detail in the backgrounds is nice, and you're never going to get that. You're never going to get that on an 8-bit machine. I don't know why it stops at that. The most important thing about a game like this, it's all about the control and how it handles, and this one has playability, or you know, it handles really, really well. Pick up the wee spanner, or the wrench I should say. I'll try and get around him. There we go. Boof! Podium finish yet again. Right, okay, that's the Spectrum one. Let's crack on. Right, this one is the Commodore Amiga. Some nice tunes. I don't know if that's sampled, or is that... Nah, it doesn't sound sampled. Some nice use of the Amiga hardware there. And a bit of disc loading sound effects here as well, for good measure. Right, graphics nice and sharp. Backgrounds do look really, really good. Not quite the same high res as arcade, I don't think. And obviously slightly less colours as well, but it certainly looks very, very impressive. Sound effects as well, all present and correct. And more importantly, it plays really well, handles really well. I'm using the keys for this. Yeah, let's go for 2 tires. I think the tires are always the best ones to go for initially. It gives you better grip. Thing about these games, if you excuse me, if you kind of have a bit of a crash and you end up facing the wrong way and you lose a bit of time, unless it's in the first lap, it is very, very difficult to try and recover, no matter how good you are. But yep, this handles really well, and that's the most important thing about a game like this. Right, what am I going to take? Yeah, go for another tyre. Right, the Volcano. Oh, arse biscuits. I always hate tracks like that, because if you go the wrong way around, then you end up going backwards, and you lose so much time. And you know, when it's only like, is it 3 laps, it's nigh on impossible to try and catch up. And the same as Super Sprint and Championship Sprint, you've got these little gates open and close, so depending on where you are and how lucky you are, you get somebody's nip through. Come on! Oof! There we go, takes a win hopefully, is it? Yep, it's Oliver bar the shouting. Oh, and there's still one more lap to go. What the hell? Oh, that was the helicopter bringing in, recovering the little blue car. So, anyway, that's the Commodore Amiga. Let's crack on. Right, Commodore 64. It's got some nice map furnace sound. I don't think I've ever actually seen this game. I think it was a late game. Yeah, I mean it came out in arcades in 1989, so I had moved on to the 16-bit machines by this point. So this was quite a late game in the Commodore 64's sort of library. Now, yeah, you know what? I'm using the keys here, and this plays really well. Some nice, nice background graphics. Some nice kind of shading in the car as well. Yeah, impressed with this. The only thing the 8-bit versions don't have, and I can understand why, is in the arcades and in the Amiga, and probably in the Atari ST ones, you've got like what looks like overhanging cables going across the track. Now, if you had them in this on 8 bits, they would just look too blocky and it would just look ridiculous. It would look really messy. Great sound though. Right, one speed and one tyres. Again, excuse me, more importantly, this one plays brilliantly. Really responsive. That's what you want. I think it's safe to say I'm not going to come first in this particular race. I wonder how many players you can have in this version. I'm assuming it's going to be 2. I mean, technically you could have more than 2 if you're using the keyboard, but I don't know if it's been I don't know if it's actually been programmed for that. Now I couldn't find this on the what do you call it, the PC. I thought there might have been a PC version, but alas, there's not. So that's the Commodore 64 one. Let's crack on. And from one 8-bit machine to another one. This is the Amstrad. Now, more specifically, the Amstrad 128K version. There was a 64K, which I didn't bother looking at. And I'm making a complete pigsy of this now. I'm actually using I'm using the joystick for this particular version, just because I can. That was all. I couldn't find the manual to see what what the instructions were. Now I've just I've just made the comment about not having the overhead cables. Well, there you go. They've got them in this version. Again, plays really well. I would probably say I'm slightly disappointed with the colour in this one. The Amstrad has got a really nice colour palette. It's got a much better colour palette than I think any other 8-bit machine, possibly with the exception of the Atari. So yeah, this could have looked nicer. It looks like the Spectrum version, though I think the Spectrum one looks nicer than this, if that makes any sense. Yeah, all a wee bit garish, but again, you know what? It's not always about the graphics; it's about the playability. It needs to look all right, and to be fair, it's you can see what you're doing. That's the important thing. Right. How do you start? I'm glad to see they've actually spelt tyres correctly. Is the American spelling T-I-R-E-S? Certainly in the UK it's T-Y-R-E-S, and in this version they've spelt it right, in other versions they've spelt it wrong when they're going for the American version. Yeah, that plays well. Graphics are absolutely fine. I just think they could have done a bit better with the colour. If you saw this and didn't know what version this was, you could probably guess: is it the MSX? Is it the Spectrum one? Even if this came out in the ColecoVision, this would probably be what it looks like. Not quite sort of sparse sound effects, obviously no music to speak of, though the music in the title screen was actually quite nice. Right, okay, that is the Amstrad. Right, this is the very last version. This is Atari ST. Now, given this was an Atari game, you would always expect them to try and put out a decent version, or at least although Atari themselves are not doing this conversion, you would think that they would stress to Domark that the Atari ST version has to be good. And you know what, I'm using the keys here. This is excellent. This is really good. Plays as sweet as anything. Really nice. Super Sprint never came out for the Commodore Amiga, but I did buy it for the ST and I played it to bits. Or not to bits, I played it to death. Great game. Used to use the keys all the time, but it was a fantastic conversion. In fact, it's still the go-to version if I'm going to play this Super Sprint either on the arcade or the ST. I'd always go for the Atari ST because it is a wee bit easier as well. But it's not a game that I've ever really played. I mean, I've seen it. I was aware of it, but you know, it's effectively a. I'm not even going to say enhanced. It plays so much similar to Super Sprint that if you like Super Sprint like me, then you're going to enjoy this. Right, okay, so that is the Atari ST. That is every version. Let's take a look at the summary. Right, so there you go. Top left is the ZX Spectrum. The top right is the Commodore 64. Yep, Commodore 64. The one in the middle is Atari ST. The one in the bottom left is the Commodore Amiga. And the one in the bottom right is the Amstrad. So yeah, you know what, Spectrum 1, great version. Graphics are quite minimal, sound is minimal as you would expect, but it plays really well. Commodore 64 one's got some nice music, plays really well. It's probably got the best graphics of the 8 bits. The Amstrad one, yeah, it plays beautifully again. Quite simplistic graphics. I'm not overly impressed with the colour. I think they could have done a better job. Atari ST and Commodore Amiga, you know what, it's very difficult to actually separate these. I think the quality of the sound on the Amiga is maybe slightly better. There's really nothing in it. So if you had to play a home version, I would go for the Commodore Amiga. But every version is fantastic. So anyway guys, listen, if there's a video you want to see me give the Arcade Perfect My Arse treatment to, just put your comments down below. And as always, thank you very, very much for watching.